And welcome to the horse playing / handicapping event of the season. This is the In the Money Media / TaylorMade Partnerships Medallion Racing Final Answer Show. We are live here from Malone's event space in Lexington, Kentucky. The room is abuzz. We're in a new room. It's full of great people, and we got a terrific show for you. Going to be talking about stakes racing on Oaks and Derby Day. I am not your host. I am Peter Thomas Fornatal, and I will now throw it to our hostess for the evening, Vanessa Ryle.
Thank you very much. Thank you. It's great to be back, guys. A second year of doing this, which is a real treat. Thank you, team, for having me back. Last year, many of you obviously are return visitors to this show. So last year, many of you will know that it was my first Kentucky Derby. I'm nailing it now.
Good pronunciation.
And off I went to the Kentucky Derby for the first time. And honestly, guys, there was me thinking in England, like, I don't know, the Grand National was kind of a big deal and sort of took over the nation for a day and everyone focused in on it. It was a bit wild when you got there. And I left the Kentucky Derby and I was just like, what was that? I mean, I was shocked by the event itself, by like the whirlwind that was the races that day. Just incredible, and an incredible buzz around the track, and the day itself. I mean, I went home with my eyes properly opened in terms of just what a massive crowd and a proper atmosphere can do to horse racing. And so, yeah, you guys really know how to do it well. And I suddenly realized what all the fuss was about. Very disappointingly, and don't hate on me for this, I have to fly home before the racing. And I wanted to get that out there, so it's just honesty.
I was going to let you get away with it. I was not going to out you.
Policy. I have to go home to a christening in a little church in England because I'm a godmother. And I don't want to be judged. I've just shoved it out there early, okay? No one hate on me for it. But it doesn't mean that I'm any less committed to the racing. And as we have already been told, we're going to be rattling through pretty much the best racing from both days in the company of obviously Philip, JK, and Peter. Why don't we just crack on? Oaks Day. And we want to, by the way, give obviously the Oaks and the Derby, Derby, the Oaks and the Derby.
Now, I had a jar. It was like this big, and every time she said Derby, I was going to have her put a 20-pound note in it, but I forgot the jar. But I'm keeping track, and she will be donating that to the charities at the end of the night. I may actually pick up the tab, but that's how we're going to do it.
That's a big shout.
We're up to 20 right now for the Derby-thon.
Okay. Obviously, we want to give the Oaks and the Derby the most time, so we'll rattle through our picks for the surrounding graded races and then really focus in on the Oaks and the Derby specifically in part 2. So, boys, without further ado, let's crack straight on. We're straight in with race 7 on Oaks Day, which is the grade 2 Ali Sheba, obviously on the dirt. And Philip, I'm going to give you the honor of going first here. Now, I have the boys' tips in front of me, so I know which way they're going and how they're playing these races. Kind of gives it away a little bit for me, no surprise factor. But Philip, obviously a lot of focus in here is going to be in and around First Mission. Where do you stand on him? Are you with him or against him here as a win option in this race?
You know, I think he's the best horse. He's definitely the most likely winner. I was disappointed he didn't win the Clark last year. I thought he should have won, and he got beat. And then, you know, he obviously no-showed in the Pegasus.
You forgive that. You're of a forgiving nature, surely.
And it's Gulfstream. You know, to me, it's his race to lose. I was kind of interested with Pipeline. He caught a sloppy track at Keeneland last time out. He's the 9, but he ran really well. He's got some races. You know, I think on Buyer Speedway, he's actually the fastest horse in the race if you go back a little bit. But I think, you know, Izzy is going to be as good stalking the pace as he would be if he just sets the pace. I think that's the biggest question. But I'm interested in him just as a little bit of a price to try to get in the mix as some sort of long shot. You know, I think generally the track can get pretty speed favoring on these big days, and you know, like I'd probably be slightly against a horse like Tapit Trice.
Okay, what about you, Peter, in terms of First Mission? You have him in top spot here, so you're obviously, is it a confident top spot selection?
I'm team First Mission here. I think he showed he was back on song last time, and I was really impressed with that race. And I also just like the fact that I think he's going to be able to get his preferred stalk and pounce trip. Looking at the work tab, he appears to be working forwardly. I'm not as against Tapit Trice as Philip is. I do think from a class perspective, he's one to use. My extremely goofy, unlikely long shot to throw in for a little piece underneath is the Japanese runner, Tio Saint-Denis. It's just so weird that he's here. I mean, I suppose he's here to hang out with his buddy Tio Password, but I'm not going to have a JRA runner finish in the top 4 in a race on Oaks or Derby Day and not have like at least a $1 backup. But really, in terms of the horizontals, big press, number 3, first mission for me.
JK, are you in agreement with Peter, or do you want to be against first mission like Philip?
Well, I mean, like, typically I'm not one who's, like, nervous or afraid to, like, side with favorites and to build
You
a lot
don't
of
say.
and build a lot of things around favorites, but they got to like make you kind of warm and fuzzy, and first mission doesn't make me warm and fuzzy. Can he win? Sure, he might win. He'll probably win. I'll use him, but I'm gonna pick the 2 Steel Sunshine on top, a horse that I thought has really been improving, and one of my favorite angles in racing, and I think in this day and age when there's so much information out there, the one sneaky thing that you can still take advantage of is horses closing into slow paces. Because typically in a slow-paced race, the final speed figure, is going to be a little bit slower. Think about Usain Bolt walking out of the blocks for 10 steps and then sprinting home. He's never going to run his best final time. He could run the best 90 meters of his life, but it will never look that great on paper. And I think that happens sometimes in slow-paced races because figures are built off of a final number. Steel Sunshine was closing into a slow pace last time, so I like him. And I'll just give one long shot in here I'm going to use. I actually have the horse picked second, I think. I don't know. The 4, Call Me Fast. A horse just has some back numbers that make some sense. But in racing, we become, we're kind of creatures of recency. There's a recency bias. When you see Call Me Fast, you look down, he ran 4th last time, a kind of a nondescript 4th. I think that was a setup for this race, right? He ran the 7 furlongs. Now I'm hoping he's going to get back to some of those sexier numbers. I'm going to use him as well, but I'll pick the 2 on top.
Okay, and guys, we now have the luxury of having the boys' tips, hopefully, on screen. There you go. There are the boys' tips, so you can scribble them down very quickly, and obviously if you're watching at home, rewind to that shot. But that should help you in terms of if the horses that are finishing in the places weren't mentioned, those are what the boys want to go with. We will move on to the Grade 3 Modesty Stakes, and JK, I'm going to stick with you here because a bit of European form in here in the form of Aspen Grove, who of course is now Jack Sisterton, was over in Ireland with Fozzie Stack, but you saw plenty of Aspen Grove over here all through last year really, with some pretty good results as well. How is she settling into life now permanently over in the US, and can she improve, more importantly, on what she did last year for the old team with now the new team?
I think she can, and something I'll probably say a few times tonight is, there's an obvious jump between a 2-year-old and a 3-year-old, just maturity-wise. Think about it, junior high to high school. There's also a jump between high school to college, and I think that's kind of the 3-year-old, the 4-year-old thing. So when you look at these horses who've been performing at a certain level, there's this natural improvement they're going to have when they're allowed to kind of grow up a little bit. And Aspen Grove feels like one of those for me. I thought her comeback race at Tampa was very good. She was closing to a slow pace like I just talked about previously. And I think Jack Sisterson's an outstanding trainer. So I'm looking forward. And I'm also a huge fan of Glen Hill Farm and their Silks and Craig Burnick. I've been following this horse. I'm rooting like hell for Aspen Grove, and I think she'll run well. And then I'll use the 10 as well, Sparkle Blue, for Graham Motion. I talk about slow pace, and I promise I'm going to talk about something else at some point. This horse in her last 6 starts has been trying to close in to a slow pace. We look at Timeform US, our friends at DRF. It's a product that we love and stand behind. They code their fractions blue or red. Blue meaning the fractions were slow, red meaning they were fast. It looks like a Kentucky locker room for Sparkle Blue. It's blue, 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 blue. I think she'll run well.
Okay. Again, to reiterate, we will have those picks up on the screen once we finish discussing each race. Philip, over to you for this. I see that you haven't got Aspen Grove or Sparkle Blue in your selection, so looking at this race very differently indeed.
Yeah, so we have the 9 Papilio in here. I think she's I appreciate that, Stu. She's doing well. I think this race is pretty wide open. I think the key really is the 4 Heavenly Sundays entered here. She's also entered in the Distaff Turf Mile on Saturday. It sounded like they're going to run here is the first preference. Papilio's a horse that does her best running when she comes from the back. I'm slightly worried, especially if the 4 were to scratch. I think you could end up in a scenario where it's just another blue bar, which would not benefit her. But I thought she ran okay last time. It was another race that was very slow paced. They absolutely flew the last quarter mile, and fingers crossed. We think she's has as good a class as Aspen Grove. At the top, she'll probably be a slightly better price. I think that the thing that makes me nervous is just what happens with Heavenly Sunday and what's the pace. But she's doing well, and we're expecting a big performance on Friday.
Now, Pete, are you just in agreement with Philip to keep him on side? Is that what's happened here?
I
'Cause
swear
see
I'm not just being a homer with this pick. This is a genuine opinion. Now, I do think I like Papilio a lot more, as Philip described, if we keep the likely pace setter in here. But I really like Papilio's prep. I thought she was a little bit against the flow. The winner just got the jump on her that day. I just like the look of the workouts, 2 and 3 back. I'll leave the final word to Philip, but we already heard that. I think she's got to be considered an A-level contender at what should be a price. I definitely see JK's points on Aspen Grove. That's a filly that I've always liked. And as JK pointed out, similarly against the flow last time, trying to close into those slow fractions. All Kentucky, no Louisville, right? In those fractions.
Do they even have a basketball team at Louisville anymore?
Ouch!
Sorry about that.
I think, assuming the field holds together, there's going to be enough pace to set up for the closers. I wouldn't be surprised to see a little 9-2, 2-9 action. Moofy is another one I wanted to mention. Second to an odds-on, pace-advantaged Ruby Nell last time. I think the Tory's going to have her in a good attacking spot on the turn. This is an open race. I probably will want to throw in some backups with runners like the 4 and the 6. Heavenly Sunday, if she turns up here, surprisingly, maybe has deeper backups. But for me, the main picks are 9, 2, and 5. And let's see if Papilio can get one done for the good guys.
The good guys. I like it. Let's have the selections then. Selection board for our second race that we're discussing, of course, just focusing in on the best of it there. There are the picks up on the screen for you guys in the room, and obviously for those watching at home as well. We move on to the 8 bells, guys, the grade 2 on the dirt, of course. And I was shocked because this is a rarity, but all 3 of these lads next to me are in agreement here. So really, I just have to pick my favorite with who makes the case. So obviously that's you, JK. No, I joke. Philip, over to you. Philip, it's yours to take away. You can all make a point.
I just think she repeats her Beaumont. They're all running for second. I would rate Impel really highly, and maybe the cutback helps that horse. They ran her at 6 furlongs in her first start. And stretched her out, and then it just didn't quite come off in the Ashland. But you could have 2 of the top 3 betting choices in the Oaks that were in the Ashland. But I think there's a bunch of pace in here. I think she's proven she can sit off and finish. And her last race was just so impressive. I think she was just begging for the cutback last time, and I think she was like 3-1 in the morning line last time and ended up getting hammered. Her race. It's her race to lose, in my opinion, just from a tactical perspective.
Pete, do you concur with that? Her race to lose, Denim and Pearls?
Denim and Pearls makes all the sense in the world, right? Should get an absolutely great setup in here. As Philip points out, that run in the Beaumont was excellent, really fast. Love the likable way she finished through the line, and her best effort came under the Twin Spires, so that's likable as well. I don't mind Impel on the turn back after not quite seeing out the trip in the Ashland. This is a horse I don't want to lose to as the presumptive best speed in this spot. I had one deep backup to mention in the form of My Main Squeeze. I thought that you could maybe excuse that effort from acting up pre-race. It got a little buried early. On the best form lines, good enough to maybe make the frame, but yeah, I'm mostly about the 7, Denim and Pearls.
JK, we've heard the case very much made for Denim and Pearls. Who else do you want to keep on side for the 8 bells?
Yeah, I mean, Denim and Pearls is the best horse in the race, and she'll probably win. I think she will. I'll be pressed up to her pretty hard. I think she's, and look, Impel's going to take some money, and I think that's why it's a clever opinion to kind of be against Impel. I like Impel as a horse. I just, in this situation on the rail, who I think is interesting, we haven't talked about yet, as a 6, Asternia, I guess is how we're going to say it. I'm sure it's Pete.
Yeah, I'll give you Asternia.
One of us up here is a New York Times best-selling author. One of us is not. I defer to Pete when it
It
comes
could be
to
Asternia.
It's
based on the
Asternia.
sire.
The
That's why-
Stallion's Asternia.
See, that's why I checked in. You know, this is a horse, if you look at her past performances, her last 2 races she's had blinkers, and she's been pretty darn good. She's run lifetime best in her last 2 starts. And I think a lot of times what happens is you look at a horse's, you know, especially a horse like this, you look at their like kind of lifetime, and it's not overly inspiring. You just see those last 2, and you start to question like, well, what did those come from? Well, they came from the blinkers. She's a completely different horse with blinkers, and I think that she deserves to be a shorter price. I will use her pretty aggressively as well, but the 7 is the horse to beat.
Okay, Denim and Pearls, very much the horse to beat then in the 8 bells. We'll get the tips board up for the 8 bells, please. That's race 9. And of course, we're edging towards the Kentucky Oaks on the Friday. We will move on to the Edgewood Stakes, though, the grade 2. And in here, again, and like I can't reiterate, it definitely doesn't happen that often that the boys agree, but we do have some agreement again here, because this Baku, I will start with you, Pete, here. I think you can have first go at Baku, because tops your selections in here. Is it as straightforward for her as many people are making it out to be?
I really like Buku. She's been a filly I've been a fan of for a long time, and I thought she was maybe a little bit better the last day than the margin of victory suggests, in that she was the most forward of the quartet that ended up in the Super in a race flow where, if you look at the pace figures, probably should have favored the deeper closers. So I thought she was extremely logical to come running here. Hard to justify a very obvious contender in this spot. I mean, we're talking about an undefeated Breeders' Cup champ, but she hasn't run as fast as the top one, and she's going to be a shorter price. That said, working forwardly, the hands she's in, not one I'm losing to in any of the horizontal wagers. I thought that number 10 Dynamic Pricing might be a live long shot to consider. Thought she had a bad trip between horses last time, struggling to get a proper run. Another one that I thought made a good move against the flow of the race, 2 back. And stop me if you've heard this one. The longer priced of the Chad Brown uncoupled entry might have a chance to get it done. Those are the 3 I'm mainly focusing on in this one.
Okay, well, you mentioned, obviously, Chad Brown's run hard to justify in this. When she won at the Breeders' Cup, JK, I loved her attitude. She had such a likeable attitude. I saw her in the paddock beforehand, then obviously the winner's enclosure afterwards. And you can't help but love her. Just everything about her, the way, if you're into horses and looking at like how they sort of look at the world, there's so much to like about her. What I want to know from you is, how much do you think she will have developed from then to now?
Well, I mean, I think that, you know, when you have a trainer like Chad who is allowed to kind of do what's best for the horse, right? You know, a lesser trainer might be kind of forced into, hey, when's Hard to Justify coming back? And, we'll have her back in February.
Does he talk like that?
Well, I'm just saying, the lesser trainer, talks like that. Oh, we'll have her back in February. But I think that, you know, Chad's can say, look, let's give her some time, let's let her develop, and let's bring her back on Oaks Day, where and allow her to kind of come into form. Anytime Chad has a horse that can find themselves forward, they're always dangerous, right? Think about Rushing Fall, think about Newspaper of Record, and Hard to Justify is one of those. But she's just going to be a little bit overbet for me. I'm not trying to beat her by any means. I just think some other horses are interesting, the 4 Buku. But the one that I want to mention that I also think is interesting is the 1 Pink Polka Dots.
Oh.
You know, I talked about that junior high to high school, or junior high to high school, or, you know, middle school to high school thing. Pink Polka Dots was running races as a 2-year-old, late 2-year-old. It was on New Year's Eve, but as a 2-year-old, figures that were competitive with what these horses have been running in the spring. If she takes a step forward off of that bad synthetic race where she was bet, I think she could be tough. And I like the fact that she's drawn the inside, because there's only one way to go. Send her away from there, get your position moving forward, and she should be able to save ground all the way around there. She'll be a huge price. And I'm not cutting in line necessarily to bet her to win, but I do think that she's interesting and a horse that I'll definitely use.
But it's interesting with that, because like with a horse like Pink Polka Dots there, you know, as you say, she's going to be a huge price, maybe 20-1, that sort of price. But people, it's such like recency bias in our sport. People so look at the last run, and, you know, you'd have to forgive her that, obviously, which you're happy to do. But that's something I think, you know, people don't often do.
Well, yeah, it was run on fake dirt. and you know, and it was off of a little bit of a break. So she didn't. And look, everyone wants to try to get into the Kentucky Oaks because who doesn't want to run the Oaks in the Derby? Give it a shot. Okay, this experiment didn't work. Let's go back to the Edgewood. I will say this though: this race and the male version of this race on Saturday, the American turf, they're both impossible races.
We've been knocked out of many picks over the years in these races. It can sometimes pay to be a little creative there.
I love that. Given everything we've just said, these are impossible races. So what hope do people have out there? Philip, surely I was shocked that you weren't with Hard to Justify here, because surely with the Porta Fortuna form line, you want that form line backed up, no?
The even tougher thing is we actually had a 2-year-old named Appellate that got beat by her ahead. She's actually been the closest horse to Hard to Justify, so 2 of our horses have gotten beaten by her, which is tough. On that alone, I couldn't pick her just because it would be too heartbreaking. I picked Buku. I picked her third. A horse I thought that was a little bit interesting was the 8, Calispera. I think the 7's got a ton of speed, as does the 1. And if the pace gets hot, I think going to Rosario, if you look down this filly's form line in Europe, she gets beat on debut by Opera Singer, who was the 2-year-old champion. Second start, she gets beat by Purple Lily, who beat Colts in a Group 3 and is, I don't know if she's going to get a mile and a half for Patty Toomey. Vespertilio won the Grade 2. She came back, got beat at short head in a Grade 1. Ran against Opera Singer again, champion 2-year-old, and then ran second to Group 3 in France. I just think she won on synthetic. Last time it didn't come off. Gulfstream's kind of a tricky turf course. I think she's a horse that's got a shot to get in the mix I think she'll be a lot higher than 10-1.
Okay, let's have the tips up then. Tips board, there we go. Thank you very much. Look at that.
It's a scary amount of agreement with the top picks
Yeah,
today.
I know. I'm nervous of that, to be honest with you. It never happens that way. Philip, whilst we have the opportunity and we're about to talk about a classic, why don't we talk about the other classic happening with the 2,000 guineas and the 1,000 guineas, obviously over in England. Not what I'm rushing back to because of the bloody christening. I really hope she's not watching, by the way. Lucy, I love you. But God damn it. But seriously though, just whilst we have a
bloody
minute,
christening, God damn it, same sentence.
You're a hell of a godmother, Vanessa.
It's all gone terribly wrong very quickly. Oh God. Right. Philip, what I actually wanted to get from you in that really wonderful and very professional link was how Porta Fortuna might perform on Sunday in the 1,000 guineas. Obviously, over in England this weekend, we've got great classics to look forward to.
Oh, yeah.
Woo! But in all seriousness, we were talking just before we went live about Porta Fortuna running in the 1,000 guineas. You must be so excited.
Yeah, it's going to be it's a huge thrill, I think, mainly due to Ascot, but European racing is becoming more popular than it ever has before in America. There's plenty of, horses. We obviously see it in all these grass races in America that it's European dominated. So we just decided we were going to go and try to find a horse really for Ascot. She's just been a dream ever since. She's a really cool horse to be around. We think she's grown and matured as a 3-year-old. Her work's been very good. She's probably slightly more relaxed, which hopefully will help her see out the mile. And I think that's the ultimate question. She got the mile at the Breeders' Cup just fine. Hopefully the rain holds off and we can keep good ground at Newmarket. But we're really excited and can't wait to go over and watch.
I was amazed earlier so over in England, just this is a slight sort of detour here, but we, often refer to the 2,000, the 1,000 guineas as kind of the last 2-year-old race of the year because it's not often. Yeah, it's just, that's the way it tends to go sometimes. I was referencing Porta Fortuna for that as a positive, but actually you made the case very quickly to me about how much she's grown and developed over the winter, which I was surprised about, but obviously she hasn't surprised you in that regard.
She always looked like a horse that was going to have plenty of scope to develop. I think the really interesting thing, just for a lot of the Americans that wouldn't be as familiar, like all the major betting choices, I guess the third choice, the Godolphin horse, are basically all making their first start of the year in a classic Grade 1. So it's just this incredibly, especially for us, it's very foreign that you would make your 2024 debut in a race that could add $1.5 million in residual value. But it's been a very wet winter, so I think we were going to run in a prep and the weather just didn't cooperate. But yeah, I think we're excited and hopefully she runs good so my boss didn't be too critical of my expense report.
Are we betting, Philip? We got to get to the main
Yeah.
question here. Are
So
we betting?
she's absolutely way too big of a price. She's, I think, going to be, her and Ylang are going to be the only two Grade 1 winners that have run over the course. Or won a Grade 1 over the course. So to me, she's absolutely worth betting.
Yeah, and to put that into context, just got the prices up here. Ylang and Fallen Angel are top of the market, but Ylang is 4-1. Meanwhile, Porta Fortuna is 20-1. And when you think about what's just been said there in regards to their form from last year, it's an extraordinary price difference. I genuinely think a lot of people at home think that she won't have trained on. I think that's a fear for a lot of people.
We got the inside word.
Yeah, I think physically we always, even like from the time that before Ascot, we felt like she's got plenty of scope. She's not just a 2-year-old. That's the great thing about horse racing. You got to run the race, and we'll see if we're right or not. But
I kind of want to get back to that expense report.
Yeah, so does my boss. So we better move on.
Let's not dive too deep into that, right? Let's get back and talk about all things Kentucky Oaks, guys, because obviously that's the big race on the Friday, what we want to get stuck into. And I was really interested on the way over here. I was listening to actually the boys' content, In the Money Media content, a lot of podcast content, and they did a run through of the Oaks runners a few days ago now. And I was intrigued. Before we get to your tips, JK, I'm going to start with you here. I was amazed that it took literally till I think the 7th horse on the rundown for you to even give a horse a chance in this, let alone a winning chance. So it got me thinking that, is this not the deepest of Oaks we've seen in recent times?
I think actually the top might be kind of nice. I think there's only like 3 horses that can win, and they just didn't happen to be in the first 7 horses.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
because I basically got halfway through that pod and I was like, wow,
Yeah.
wonder what is going to win this.
yeah, I mean, look, I think Tarifa is really nice. I think she's a very obvious horse. She's forwardly placed. She's Brad Cox. You get Flavian Pratt. She's tactical. She finishes her races. She's never really run poorly outside of, I guess, the last race as a 2-year-old. But whatever, that happens. Sometimes just, you got to figure some things out. And she's been training well. So Tarifa, sure, can absolutely win. A horse that I'll use prominently. Just FYI, she's a 2-year-old champion. What more do you want me to tell you about that? Bill Mott did not say to himself, look, we got a 2-year-old champion. We're going to come back in the Ashland, and we're going to run the best race of her life.
Worst Bill Mott impression I've ever heard, by the
Well,
way.
because he's hard to impersonate.
Yeah.
The hardest person I've ever had to get on Cart Talk, but I got it finally, but it was impossible. He's been spinning me for years.
I should, by the way, stop doing impressions on these sort of feeds because my company at home had to pay a fine for an impression I did, an Irish accent I once did on Sky Sports Racing, got an official complaint. It was that bad. So
It's better than your American accent, if we're being honest,
I
Vanessa.
actually thought my American accent
That's
was very
crazy.
good,
We're
but
gonna
yeah.
find you for saying Derby. I think Just FYI is an absolute possibility. She's. What more can I say about her? But the interesting horse, and the horse I'm going to pick on top, is the 11 Ways and Means.
Yes.
Ways and Means, and I feel like this isn't that cute because I've seen a lot of people picking the horse. Not that I thought it was that cute, anyways, but I will say this. A little insider. I was on opening day at Saratoga. I was fortunate enough. I ran into a person to Ryan Day, the head coach at Ohio State. Ran into him at
Name
Saliva.
drop.
No, this is honest. No, this is a real story. And he wanted to go to Chad Brown's barn in the morning to see it. But getting into Saratoga is a little tricky. There's it's just if you don't have a badge or something, it can be tough. So I said, oh, coach, I'll drive you in the morning. I'm an old football coach. I'm a fan of football coaches. I was trying to be nice. And I said, what time do you want to go? He said 6. It was like 1 in the morning, and I was not well. So I woke up, hungover as all could get out, probably still drunk, illegal to drive. Picked him up, we go. That morning, Chad said to us, while we were there, I might have the best dirt horse I've ever trained, and it was this Practical Joke filly, Ways and Means. This is before she ever ran. Then she debuts and runs off the screen like a complete freak. And then she got injured in the race that in the spinaway where she got beat. She got hurt, and she had one of the worst trips you could ever imagine having in her last race. I think she's sitting on a monster race. And I'm going to pick the 11 Ways and Means.
How disappointed though, like given all of that and that fun little story and everything, I know she's obviously not revved up for the hill for that return, but were they genuinely happy with that as a run?
I think that she probably. I mean, she got beat, but she ran well considering how bad her trip was. I actually think she did run really well. Just, sometimes I think in these
Early move
situations,
wide.
you have to ask yourself, if she wins by 4, how do you feel about her?
Well, then we think back to the debut and we think, what the hell were we doing?
But I think if she doesn't get in trouble, she wins by 4. So that's why I like her a lot.
Like it? Okay, case made. Let's bounce back, Peter, to just FYI, because obviously she deserves all the respect in the world for this. And, of course, JK's right in the sense that the team clearly gave her a run when we last saw her. Yes, she didn't win. Was that below expectations, though?
I don't think so, and I'll tell you why. So we started this podcast 10 years ago over with our friends. They said it would never happen, but over with our friends.
At the age of 50, Peter decided to start a podcast. So, there's hope for so many of us out there.
We reunited with our original benefactors for this Derbython event tonight. And I want to welcome in everybody watching on the screen. By the way, if you're looking for more information about the charitable element of tonight, we've got it for you. inthemoneypodcast.com/Derbython, or there's a crawl on the screen. If you're watching online, you can see. But we started this little podcast 10 years ago. I was a little bit younger than what Vanessa said, but not that much. And one of the things, before too long, there were bingo cards out of things that we would say. I think Jonathan mentioning being a high school football coach was on the bingo card. Closing into blue time form U.S. fractions was on the bingo card. And another thing that was on the bingo card was Bill Mott with a target. There's simply no trainer better in the business than picking out a race from a long way out and saying, I'm going to get this horse there, even if it's incrementally. He is, understandably, a lot of trainers today, because their business depends on it, they worry about their win percentage, and that might be paramount. And Bill Mott has a good win percentage, don't get me wrong, but I think that, that idea of finding the target and working backwards. Look, this filly's a 2-year-old champion, obviously, undefeated as a 2-year-old, wins the Breeders' Cup. But I'll tell you what, Vanessa, in that Ashland, she might not have won, but she did something she'd never done before. She ran a truly fast speed figure. And, as a time guy, that really stuck out to me when this filly, who almost had to be short of full fitness, is running her best ever race, and people are getting ready to dismiss her a little bit because, she was undefeated and now she's not. That must mean it's disappointing. Not necessarily, not so fast. I think she's ready to run her best ever race, and she's in the right hands. That's all that said, I pick Ways and Means too. Jonathan, I didn't get to hang out with any famous college football coaches in the wake of her debut, but my jaw was on the floor just like them when she debuted. Sure, she didn't win second out, but she got hurt in that race and took some time away. And Chad Brown, certainly no slouch as a trainer either. Another one who I think probably picked the Oaks and worked backwards. And, I agree with Jonathan. I feel like that was a very difficult trip. She had absolute license to be a little bit short late. She lost to a very good filly in Power Squeeze, who we'll probably get to at some point, who I thought had an absolutely perfect trip. She's got to improve too. I'm very happy going to war with these two. I've heard so much wise guy love. You talked about, the horses on the inside who we didn't give a lot of count to. There's been a lot of wise guy love for Torpedo Anna, and she's certainly a contender, and it may have given her a little bit of short shrift on the podcast you listened to. But at the prices, Vanessa, I'm very, very happy trying to get in there and go to war with Just FYI and Ways and Means, because I'm pretty darn sure they're both going to run their best ever races in this year's Kentucky Oaks, and I'm hoping it's good enough.
I didn't give short shrift to anyone. If Tarifa, Ways and Means, or Just FYI don't win, I will show back up on Saturday for the Kentucky Derby and probably not change much. But one of those,
we were going to get a bold statement.
one of
He's
those
gonna
three
be,
horses is going to win.
He's going to wear a tuxedo, something like that.
That's definitely not going to happen. But those other three are going. One of those horses is going to win.
That's a big shout then from JK. Philip, are you in agreement with that? That one of those 3 horses?
Yeah, I think they are. I would probably throw in Leslie's Rose. Yeah, I think there's a case to be made that she just probably got a perfect trip last time out. Her first 2 races were very impressive. For whatever reason, it just didn't happen on the day in the Devona Dale. She was down inside. But I thought she kicked away from a really good field. Again, just so FY didn't have a perfect run. She had a spiked attempt, had to miss her first race back. but she's done really well. I got to see all these horses this morning, and Just FY was hands down the best horse I saw in the Oaks or the Derby.
Yeah.
And a lot of times I would say I don't even go into that because you don't see these horses all the time. I've talked myself off more winners looking at them.
I tell you, I've made that mistake. Breeders'
Yeah.
Cups, like you say that getting the access in the mornings is a godsend and gives you great insight. Honestly, guys, that's not true. It's actually very confusing.
Yeah,
seeing
you
him in the
talked
morning.
me off of a winner one time.
Oh,
What horse was that?
Ouch! Ouch!
It was a
burn.
Godolphin horse, I think, wasn't it?
Yeah, probably. Ouch.
And so the question mark for me on Ways and Means, she absolutely needed the run last time. She was rank. She didn't have a great trip. I'm just not completely convinced she wants a mile and an eighth. Like if this race was a mile and a 16th, I'd say, hey, maybe she's absolutely. I mean, she could be as good as anything in here or better. So we might look back in 3 months and say, she's the best. Like to me, this is a perfect acorn filly. Like she goes and runs fourth in the Oaks, doesn't see the trip out, and she goes and wins the acorn by 5, which is but now I don't know what they're going to do if they're going to run it at a mile and a 16th.
I think they're
It's
running
a
out of the chute.
two-turn or
No, they're
run it
running out of the
Wilson shoot
yeah.
1 mile.
Yeah, so it's a mile. So, to me, and I just think she's going to get bet. Like I think at the current prices, if I could have, I think actually on my pick says Leslie's Rose, but after seeing Just FY today, I'd be aggressively betting her. I think she's going to take a step forward. She looked absolutely unbelievable. And it's more just a question mark for me on Ways and Means at the distance. And if she is as rank in the Oaks as she was last time, she has no shot to get a mile and an eighth versus these horses. Again, I'm not sure overall what the quality of the 3-year-old fillies are. I think the top is very strong.
Yeah, it's actually interesting that just as a slight diversion there. Do you, obviously we're talking about classics here, but you obviously, from what you've said, don't think that there's a deep classic generation this time around?
No, I mean, it's interesting. I was listening to something Pete and them did with Jerry Bailey and Randy Moss, but just the horses just don't run as much. And so you have so much less to go on. I mean, look, Just FY, she broke her maiden at 6. She won the Frizette on a sloppy track at a mile, and then she won a really slow Breeders' Cup, where she probably got the perfect trip on a track that completely set up for her. And then in her only start this year, she ran second. She got beat 3 lengths without a whole lot of excuse. Now, what I would say is Leslie's Rose quickened at the right time at Keeneland. It played early in the meet. It played to horses that took the lead, pretty early in the stretch, and it's a short stretch, so she was always going to be a little bit compromised. But I just think you have so much less to go on, and so you just have to read into, hey, Ways and Means was ranked last time. Talent-wise, there's no question she's right there at the top. But, when I look at it and I see Practical Joke out of Warrior's Reward,
she doesn't have to
that
see it out.
screams 7 furlongs.
She doesn't have to see it. It's a good point. I'm trying to give extra credit saying, she was short off the break. But, you could, it's a reasonable supposition, and I want, at a halfway decent price. I want 4.5 to 1.
I think to me, and she might float up, but if I could take Just FY or her at somewhat similar odds, I'd much rather have Just FY. It doesn't mean Ways and Means can't win.
Yeah. No, I
And
get
she
that.
might get there on talent, but, and again, if the race was a slightly shorter, maybe she hangs on. But
But the 2-year-old champ's supposed to be the favorite.
no,
Especially
and she
this
might be.
buzz, yeah.
I just,
Right, off the workouts. The workouts
Yeah.
control the market in a way in a day. Like, you'll go all year and you won't hear that much about workouts. Derby and Oaks, they really, those narratives do get baked in a little. I'd love to pause for a second on Leslie's Rose, because I feel like there's part of me that feels like this is a horse I'm supposed to bet against. I think Philip made a great point about how she was maybe advantaged there, the way the track was playing, and now she's all the way on the outside. But I wouldn't be shocked if she gets a little bit lost in the betting, and she just beat a filly I love by 3. I kind of want to keep her in the picks. Jonathan, you're the one who's the most anti-Leslie's Rose. Is it just down to it makes your teeth itch to bet one that was so maybe with the grain of the track last time?
No, I need to love a horse who draws the 14.
Yeah.
If it's Just FYI, no problem. If it's Ways and Means, no problem. Ways and Means, no problem. If it's Tarifa, no problem. But I'm not going to take the horse that I think is the 5th or 6th best from the 14. That's all.
Yeah, that's a very fair, and I think ultimately that's why. Again, we had Molly was all over me to get our picks in early. So
I was wondering when that was going to come up, but Jonathan was odds on to be the one to mention.
Oh, I was last. I got yelled at when I walked. This first thing, she didn't even say hi. How you doing? I hadn't seen you in a while. She said, "You're in trouble. I'm going to kick you in the shins." I was like, "The shins." Seems like assault.
That's aggressive, Molly.
Yeah.
So-
You physically kicked him? Woof. She's a tough customer. Don't run afoul of Molly.
Yeah. So Monday, I picked her, and then the more I thought about it, I just would have shifted. That's a complete to me, it becomes a lot about price. You know, if Just FY goes off at 5-2 and Leslie's Rose is 7-1, I might be a lot more tempted to bet Leslie's Rose.
She'll drift from out there.
Yeah. It's taught, I think the other thing too is these days are so unique because the pools are going to be massive.
Yeah.
And, you get horses in the Derby that are 30-1 that should be 130-1.
For sure.
And so there's all this dead money. The Oaks happens to a lesser extent. What I always think is people go and they want to bet Chad and they want to bet Todd and
they want to bet Baffert.
And they we'll save that one for the
that
Breeders'
was not
Cup.
on the bingo card.
and it just generally leads to those horses being shorter prices, which is crazy because Bill Mott's a Hall of Famer. He's as good as anybody, but he's not the in vogue name for the popular people. Would be Pletcher and Chad would be the two most
And it's
popular.
amazing the things that affect these markets for these specific days and races. You're talking about the work in the mornings, and as Peter mentioned there, you don't see that at any other time of year, yet this time of year we really focus in on it and let it affect our views. And sometimes I think, as I joked about earlier, on a serious note, you can take it too much into consideration, and then you look back and you think, how did I miss that when the bare form was there with a Just FYI, for example? But again, that ties in with.
Yeah, I think there was a perfect example. A few years ago, there was a horse in the Derby named My Boy Jack, and he should have been 25-30-1, and he was 6-1 because his name was Jack, and everybody that named Jack just bet him.
That's the Grand National thing at
home.
And
the pool of the populace on these big days can just really change a race. I think it'll be interesting to me, but I just think even if you weighted all those horses at equal odds or somewhat similar odds, I would just prefer Just FY.
Into Champagne's going to be overbet. Just want to say that.
You think I was wondering in the Derby, we have a human name in Honor Marie, who I love, but I wonder if that's a name that might.
That's the buzz horse, Pete. So you're definitely taking.
We need to save that for the second part, which we'll be moving on to shortly. Before we move on to the second part, guys, we're going to take a little break, but these are the tips after all that chat. We've got Ways and Means, Just FYI, Leslie's Rose in there, and obviously for JK, Tarifa as well. So those are the tips up on your screen. Pete, what's happening in the break?
Well, we're gonna. If you're watching at home, if you're here, we've got some good stuff. If you're live, we'll talk about what's happening here in the room in a minute. If you're watching on the stream, we wanted to give you more information about the charities who this Derbython event is meant to sponsor, and you're going to hear about them in this little break piece with me and Rich Rosa from Daily Racing Forum, Shannon Kelly from the Jockey Club, really pillars of the sport. We talked earlier about the importance of charities and the way that horse racing can help the people who make the sport go. You're going to be hearing a lot more about that during the break, talking about the PDJF. Obviously, the riders, we're nowhere without them. The Jockey Club Safety Net charity, which has a lot of different elements, but helping people that help put on the show, essentially. And then you've also got the Thoroughbred Aftercare Alliance, helping the horses, that without whom we would have no sport. So we're going to have a little bit of a piece about that. We're going to be back here in just about 15 minutes again. If you want to give to these charities, check out our link inthemoneypodcast.com/Derbython. If you're watching on the screen, you can see the crawl there. We're going to be back in 15 minutes with the Late Pick 5 on Oaks Day. Everybody refresh your drinks, etc. here, and we'll be back in just about 15 minutes.
So again, just a reminder, we'll come back in a few minutes. It's definitely a chance you can get some more food, get some drinks. Molly is going to have a raffle, so everybody should have gotten a ticket when you came in, so make sure you find your ticket. Again, just also if you wish to participate in the betting syndicate, Samantha will be here for intermission, and then she'll also be here for a little bit after, so you can check in with her in the back and give her all your information. So, all right, you ready?
I'm going to do that.
I'm happy to
In Shannon right now.
There I am. Hi, everybody.
Oh, there we go. I'm here.
Now we're good to go.
I'm going to leave the stage, let you two guys talk for a little while, and I'll be back.
Beautiful. Thank you, Rich. Hello and welcome to a special presentation from the alphabet soup of horse racing. We've got a little ITM, we got a little DRF, we got a little ABR, we got a little TJC. It's the places with the letters. Rich, if you're listening, you can make this shot look a lot prettier, I think, by making these there should be a little thing under the screen on StreamYard where we can level out these boxes, because certainly, there we go, certainly a lot better. And if we had to do it the other way, let's make the pretty woman look big and the guy in the hotel room, struggling after 86 hours of creating Derby content, put him in the small postage stamp box. But I'm super excited about this Derbython, as Rich said, to bring us in something that's never been done before. And why are we doing this? Well, we're doing this for great causes. We're doing this because it's a fun exercise in cooperation and creating great content. But we do have a beneficiary here, and we will now bring in the director of the Safety Net Foundation from the Jockey Club, Shannon Kelly. Shannon, first and foremost, how are you? Happy Derby.
Happy Derby. I'm wonderful. I'm sitting in my New York office here, and it's sunny today, so we will take it. I don't know what the weather looks like for some of this Derby prep, but you know what? That's not my area of expertise. So if it rains, it pours, that makes no influence on me, because I will just bet the picks that someone gives me, and I don't care either way. But you know what? It's important to have different views in these type of things. But we're really excited that you guys came up with this idea. I think number one, not from the charity perspective, but taking everybody who's individually putting out this content ahead of, essentially our biggest day of racing on the main stage. I think it's fantastic. I think putting everything in one spot for everybody to consume different types of content from different people while they're prepping is good. I mean, one-stop shop is the way of the world. I mean, it's called the internet, right? Yeah. So, I mean, I think it's fantastic. So, and I love the fact that we're incorporating some charitable aspects to this. I think one thing that we always say at the Safety Net is obviously a lot of people consuming this content are on various journeys of their handicapping and gambling. So we want to hit all of those and educate people on some of the aspects of racing that maybe you don't see opening up your ADW, opening up your program and placing some bets. You might not know about some of these things. So we really appreciate the opportunity. A lot of these charities, myself, the Safety Net Foundation, the TAA and the PDJF all represent communities that are the backbone of the industry, and there'd be nothing to bet on if we didn't have these charities and these participants, the horses, the jockeys, and the people that take care of the horses. So yeah, so we're happy to be a part of it. We're happy to educate people on the charities, and we're just excited to be a part of this fun day of content.
Love it. And we're going to have a lot more about the individual charities throughout. We might ask you for a little bit of an overview in my next question to you, Shannon, about what each of them does, and talk a little bit about those pillars that hold up the sport, as you so aptly put it. But I also just want to give people an overview. 24 hours of content from these three different sources. There's so many highlights. I don't want to start naming them because it's like it's going to be one after the other. If you miss a lot of this content, you can probably find it in other places, either on the ABR YouTube, the DRF YouTube, the In the Money YouTube. I encourage everybody watching who's interested in this stuff to subscribe to all three of those individually and be able to go back and get things. And we have our man from DRF popping back in the corner there. We'll see what Rich Rosa has to say.
Well, I think things are largely adjusted. What we had to do is just get the right YouTube. So if you're watching this, you're on the right YouTube. So I think everything's working. So we're ready to go. So
that reminds me of the old joke, Rich. Okay, raise your hand if you're not here.
That's it. Exactly. Well, I'm here.
What is the place? I'm not sure if I'm seeing the graphics exactly as they're outputting to YouTube. One thing I think we should hit as many times as possible during the show is the link where people can go to learn more about the charities and to give generously to these amazing causes. Is that something we should just be giving out?
I'm going to show right to the screen now some QR codes and the charities, and we could talk about it.
Oh, beautiful. There it is.
Oh, that's it.
That's a nice looking graphic there. I love it.
So
And
why don't
we
we let
should
Shannon talk through the 3 different charities, and she got QR codes, and you have donation links right there.
Yep,
That's terrific.
fantastic. Well, this is a great place to put all of these. The QR code is like the best invention I've ever heard of. So, like, I don't know why we didn't have that before. I feel like it was only menus at restaurants in New York City during COVID, and now it's everywhere.
Yes.
But yeah, so we're one of the 3 charities, like I said before. There's the TAA, the PDJF, and the Safety Net Foundation. The Safety Net Foundation is under the umbrella of the Jockey Club. Our mission is to assist all of those humans that work in horse racing in any capacity all over the country who fall upon hard times. So I would say a majority of our assistance goes to people who might have gotten sick, hurt, or something has happened with their families and they need some extra level of support. All of our assistance is confidential. We review every single case, everything's individualized, and we help with things like medical bills, rent, car payments, electric bills, food on the table. And I think something that sets us apart is that we coordinate with a lot of other charities. You know, we picked 3 charities for this Derby-thon, but thankfully in this industry, we have hundreds of charities that do amazing work. So we work with a lot of the other human charities, including the PDJF, but also the New York and all the chaplaincies all over the country, HBPA organizations, benevolence organizations. We work with all of them. So that covers one part of the humans. The next is our beloved jockeys who are guiding our horses to those wins. The PDJF assists disabled riders. They have people there. I think it's about 30. I might be speaking out of turn here, that receive monthly assistance when they are permanently disabled. An unbelievable cause. Obviously, watching races, we know how dangerous of a sport and how skilled of a sport it can be. And so for us to be there for our fallen riders when they need us is fantastic. They do great work. And then the TAA, which encompasses many aftercare organizations. They accredit all of these organizations. They are the umbrella and finding, you know, homes, careers, all different ways for their horses after they leave the track. So it's a fantastic organization that is very widespread. And all of us could use your support. So if you hit big this weekend or throughout the year, consider sending us a few dollars. You know, it's amazing. I say that every dollar counts, but that's really true. We really can help a lot of horses and a lot of people by supporting this, and everybody kind of has to get in on the movement, you know, to make a difference. So we're thrilled to be a part of it. I hope I gave a good overview of all the charities. DRF and In the Money have done an amazing job putting this together. And
America's Best Racing. Don't forget America's
Best.
Best.
Of course. Well, they're us. So I always say that's my team. But yeah, they're fantastic. Throughout this whole coverage, you'll see commercials of ours saying what we do. We'll be popping in, talking about our charities, and these QR codes will be up on the screen at various times. So if you scan and you make a donation, please make sure you can put your name on the list of, you know, to be noticed and recognized for your donation. If you want to be anonymous, that's great too. But we really hope you all consider, you know, participating in the charitable aspect, and we really commend the organizers of this for including that. I think it's a great thing.
Yeah, we have. We're going to run the crawl after we drop this. So let me drop the slate. We're going to run. We're running a crawl, and you can see the URL that you can go to after you make a donation. If you want to be included on the crawl and you want to be noticed by everybody watching Derby-thon, you fill out a little form, and then we'll go ahead and get you in the crawl, and you'll get noticed that you've donated. So thank you, Shannon. Great cause. Absolutely.
Let me give a little hard sell. I mean, Shannon's point is excellent about, you know, if you hit big, give to these generous causes. But I do want to point out, you know, we generally at In the Money fall under the operating principle that self-praise is no praise at all. I'm going to change that a little bit here because I get to do it in the context of also praising our partners at America's Best Racing and at Daily Racing Forum, our old home. And I'll just say this, so much great free information is given out by these entities on a regular basis, no more so than the 24 hours, well, almost 23 and a half now, that you're going to be watching on here. It's all free. This is the kind of stuff that could easily be paywalled and people would give money for. Be preemptive. Go ahead and say, you know what? I know this content is going to be worth it. I'm going to go ahead right now, and I'm going to send a donation to each of these charities just as a thank you to the folks putting out this content, but also to support these amazing charities. Shannon gave a great overview. I love that term, the pillars. You think of the legs of the stool that hold up racing when you're talking about the horses themselves and the jockeys and the people who make the show go behind the scenes. That's about as important as it gets. So give generously to those. You're going to see that on the crawl, and get ready. I mean, I would just have this on constantly and just, pop in, pop out as you're doing your handicapping, as you've got other things going on. I mean, again, there's so much good stuff. I mean, from our end, our Monster Pod content's going to be here. We've got a live show that is going to be available for the first time here tonight at 7. That one always does well. The DRF stuff, always worth watching. Boy, I've been loving some of the really fun ABR live content. Yeah. They're part of the team as well. There's just so much. If anything, it's too much, but too much is never enough, as a wise man once said.
Well, definitely the live hours, right? With ABR and Ren, Alexa, and Rachel doing what they've been doing at Keeneland Racetrack, coming on and do it for the Kentucky Derby. I think that's going to be fantastic. So that's a must-see hour at 6 o'clock, and then your must-see TV at 7 o'clock for sure. I
think there's something for everybody. I mean, depending on where you're coming at this from, I think it's great to keep it up and just pop in when you're wanting to hear something interesting and learn something new. I mean, I think it's great. I'm just going to have it running in the background all day. So if anyone expects me to focus, I'm going to start taking notes because God knows I can't pick anything. So I just do as I'm told. So I'm going to be writing this down.
Well, let me pump one other show, right? We came up with a concept called Friends Bet with Friends. And we bought Pete Rotundo Sr. and Lee Davis. They'll be on, I think, right around the midnight hour. And Pete, you and I taped that yesterday, and that was literally hysterical. So
midnight's good. Late night is good because it gets a little cheeky with those two, as you might imagine. So I think that's just like the late night shows outside of prime time, gets a little saucy. I think that makes sense. I'm going to commit a Cardinal Broadcasting sin here before we kick off the show and ask you a question, Rich, I have no idea the answer to. Is there a place where people can check out the schedule ahead of time, or are they just
in the crawl? If you go to the crawl and you want more information about the schedule, you can get the schedule. Mike's going to put up a slate in a second, and he's going to show us what's coming up next. And we're going to do that frequently during the show. We got a lot of stuff for you. So we'll show slates in between to give you an idea what's coming on. And if you want to go to the, we're going to put the crawl in there. If you want to go, I think it's promosdrf.com/derbython, if I'm right. I might not have it right. You'll see it in the crawl in a second. Go there. You'll see the schedule. You click on any of the charities there. You can donate. The QR code's there. Everything's there for you.
Terrific. I think we're about ready to get started, Rich. If we didn't synchronize our watches before this started, but if my calculations are correct, we're getting ready to start rolling with some of this content. Do you want to get to the first piece and tell us what we're about to see?
The first we're gonna go to some ads, and I have to actually look to the schedule and tell you what's next. So the first thing we're gonna do, DRF clocker reports.
That's important. You gotta, event. You're hearing what's going on in the mornings is so important, right. And nobody has more experience than the DRF clocking team led by Mike Welch. So that'll be great.
And we're gonna play out the last 4 or 5 days of clocker reports, the most important information that you need, and Mike will deliver to you in just about a minute. So we're gonna sign off, and we're gonna get ready for the next bunch of shows. Pete, you're live in a few hours. Shannon, thank you. I think we're going to have you on again tomorrow.
Yes.
Close out the show. We look forward to it.
Thank you, guys. Enjoy, everybody. Enjoy the content.
If you're in the room, we're about to You tell me when. Okay.
He's going to give us a 10-second.
Yeah. I'll do a welcome back. And da-da-da-da-da. Welcome back, folks. We are at Malone's in Lexington. It is the In the Money Media Tailor-Made Partnerships Medallion Racing Final Answers event. We would love to have your attention because we are about to give you our thoughts on these 5 Grade 1 races happening on Saturday here, culminating with the Kentucky Derby. And with that, we bring back the hostess with the mostest, Miss Vanessa Ryle.
Wow, that was a big intro, wasn't it? Big second part intro, guys. Thank you. In that very short break we just had, we got really stuck into talking all things Derby with a few of you out there. And I just sat back down here and I turned to JK and he said, what? And I said, I'm just so excited. So we want to get to the Derby chat because that's what you're all here for, right? That's what I'm here for, but I'm not because of that bloody christening. But anyway, we will kick off with the first race we are discussing on Derby Day, which is the Pat Day Mile. Peter Thomas Fornatali, I'm going to come to you first here. I can safely say that this is not a race that I have any sort of a handle on, but of course, we're on Derby Day, we're looking at top class form, and some of that form is in and around Top Connor and Top Connor's performances, in behind, of course, a little-known horse called Sierra Leone. So, that's the way you've gone in the Pat Day Mile.
I think Top Connor is extremely interesting in the Pat Day Mile. There's a little bit of a narrative here in that this is a horse that was apparently originally going to be going, was it in the Wood? And then at the last minute ended up appearing in the Bluegrass Stakes right here in Lexington, Kentucky. He ended up as a de facto pacemaker for his stablemate, Sierra Leone, going very fast early in this race. This is a horse that Jonathan will tell you has always been well thought of. I think turning back in distance in a race where the only objective is for him to win, I think he's going to get a beautiful toe into the race from the likes of Vlahos, and I think he's going to be very tough to down in this year's Pat Day Mile. He's a confident top selection for me in this spot. I do think we should pause on Vlahos for at least 1 second. This horse contested very fast fractions, pulled away on debut. Our friend Michelle Yu, who's been with us before in some of these events, really likes this horse, actually picked him in our Kentucky Derby draft that you can find on the In the Money Media YouTube channel. I think Vlahos has a chance potentially to lead these from gate to wire. And I have a ridiculous idea for 3rd and 4th that I just want to mention, a horse I've been tracking for a while, the number 10 Gettysburg Address. I could be in the corner eating paste on this one. But this is a horse that, again, I've had some positive notes on from early in his career. I made a case for him at $1,000,000 to 1 in the Wood Memorial. Turning back here, I'm not letting him beat me out of 2nd and 3rd. Mostly 8s, a little 11, and a tiny bit of 10 for me in the Pat Day Mile.
And JK, you're in a little bit of agreement with the Vlahos angle in, surely.
Well, yeah, so I have a couple random thoughts quickly. So the
Love
one
a random thought.
Yeah, the one Carbone. If you've never been, it's actually a very good restaurant in New York City, and that's coming from a guy who's married to an Italian woman who owns a very good Italian restaurant. Carbone
Shout out Giovanina.
Yes.
Carbone is outstanding.
Guy lives 1 week in New York, and he's giving out restaurant
lives
recommendations. I don't know
outstanding.
about this.
The other thing is, does anyone in here know what the number 8's name means? Top Connor. Anyone know?
Hands
gonna
in
be
the
fun.
air,
Spoiler
please.
alert. No, I'll let you say it.
Now, this is fun. It's the Boston accent for hockey saying put it in the top corner. Top Connor. That's what it. Honestly, that's what
Connor.
Top Connor. Top Connor. I
Clever.
didn't make that up. It's honestly real. I like that horse too. I absolutely love Lejos in here. I like single on everything in my life. It's going to be a tough Saturday if Lejos doesn't win. This horse ran so damn fast early. His pace figures are insane. If he can somehow find a way to just, I don't care. He can go as fast as he wants to go. They're going to struggle to catch him. But I also think that Doug O'Neill is an outstanding trainer who's won the Derby 2 times, who knows how to get a horse to kind of relax a little bit and to save a little bit. I think Lejos is going to be extremely hard to beat. But I will say this as a disclaimer and a little bit of a shout out to one of Lexington's own. My dear friend and professional horse player and record-breaking Breeders' Cup betting challenge champion who's here, Sean Borman, hates the horse. He absolutely hates the horse. So I just wanted to give that disclaimer. I love the horse. He hates the horse.
You may be eating paste in the corner.
He won $500,000 this year. I didn't, so I'm just letting you know.
But you've loved Top Connor since minute 1. You were talking about this horse after one race as a Kentucky Derby contender. Why are you off him?
Can absolutely finish his race. If Lejos doesn't show up, I love Top Connor. But I really like this horse. I think he's going to run extremely well.
Wait, also, we have to now refer to Peter about how we say this horse's name because we've had differing versions here.
Oh, he might be right. I think I was going with Michelle's pronunciation of Vlahos. It could be Vlahos. But we can all agree it's Top Connor.
Number 11. Number 11 is actually what JK was referring to. Philip, over to you here then. Who do you want to add into the mix, if anyone at all? Or are you in agreement with the boys here?
I just think I think I picked the 9. It's just an absolute bomb as my top pick. I think Nash is the most likely winner, the 12. To me, there just looks like there's a ton of speed in this race. I like the fact they're cutting Nash back in his only race at Churchill. He basically put himself on the Derby trail. He didn't quite make it as a Derby contender, but they cut him back to a mile. Last time out, he set a little bit further off the pace. To me, he's the horse to beat. I think the distance and the likely pace scenario would be tough for Vlahos. I could see Top Connor winning. I just thought the 9, first time out, made up a ton of ground. Second start, first start on dirt, chased a pretty fast pace and just held on for third. The winner was too good. I'm hoping that horse could take a step forward in his third start. Could get a bunch of pace to run at, and it's going to be absolutely bombs away if the pace gets hot, which I think it will.
Okay. All right, let's have the tip selection sheet then up for the first race we're looking at on Derby Day, the Pat Day Mile. There it is. For anybody in the room, for anyone online joining us, that is the boys' selections. We roll on, guys, to race 9, which is the American Turf. And little bit of, I suppose, European, but much more kind of Dubai interest in here in Legend of Time for Charlie Appleby and Frankie Dettori. They're teaming up on Derby Day with 3 runners. Obviously, Frankie will be on plenty of others, but he'll be riding for Godolphin 3 times on Derby Day, including this Legend of Time, which is an interesting one. So Charlie Appleby, obviously trainer over in England, and like you guys know what he does with his US runners. He's had a huge amount of success with the horses that he's brought over to America in recent times. I think the really interesting angle with him at the moment is that he's actually set up a more sort of structured satellite yard over here. So the invasion really is coming from Charlie Appleby. And Legend...
I'm not comfortable with British people talking about
invasion.
invasions.
No, it's a fair comment and it's well made.
You might trigger me here, Vanessa.
Yeah, sorry, no, don't worry, relax. But it is interesting that he's going to have a kind of, I think it's roughly a 12-horse satellite yard over here in the coming weeks and months. Legend of Time has been sort of one of the chosen ones for that satellite yard. Obviously has the recent form in Dubai of late, 3 pretty easy wins over there. Kind of hard to know what to make of him on his UK form because he was a late progressing 2-year-old. He was sort of a see the stars, relatively late to come to hand. His latest win was in a listed company in Maidan. Now, that has been franked stable form-wise by actually Musical Act coming out and winning since. But you know how it is with some of those Maidan races, Peter. Like, it is hard to convert that form to anywhere. but America as well. A lot of people will be latching on to Legend of Time because of the Dettori factor, because of the Charlie Appleby factor. I think he might be too short a price in here. I'm not saying that he can't step forward, but for me, he would have to step forward on what he's shown thus far. That's not a certainty, and he's a short enough price, or he's predicted to be.
With some of the sacrilegious things you've said tonight on this podcast, I'm not sure this is the right metaphor, but I think we're singing from the same hymn book when it comes to Legend of Time, because I do think he's probably the most likely winner. You mentioned musical act. He didn't look so great in his run at Keeneland. Now, granted, Legend of Time beat him rather easily back there in the Medon run, but I think as likely of a winner as Legend of Time is, this might be an interesting place to get a little bit cute. And the place that I want to get cute is with a horse that I think is going to be a very big price. I think he's going to be bigger than the 15-1 of the morning line, because he comes out of that Transylvania Stakes, and he was beaten by, I don't know, maybe 4 of these that day. But I really like the run from Can Group in the Transylvania Stakes. I thought he was impossibly wide throughout, and I thought he just showed a very likable attitude. He was just trying all the way to the line. And I think this is a race where there's going to be plenty of pace, and it should be run to suit for a horse coming from off the pace. I think he'll be absolutely friendless, to use an English expression, friendless in the betting. Very big price. I think Can Group can maybe come running and get a piece. I'm not leaving out Legend of Time. I'm not anti, but I do think this is an interesting horse at a very big price. Another one with a terrible post, who I think I need to mention. I don't know if you mentioned him or not in your picks, JK, but number 14, Agate Road, you've been saying the whole time, is a turf horse. He is getting back onto the turf. I'm not getting beat by him either, but Can Group, a little bit of Legend of Time reluctantly, and some Agate Road for me.
It's so funny. We didn't plan this at all. I promise we didn't.
Maybe we should do more planning in hindsight.
It's not a bit.
Nah, overrated.
I honestly, I think hitting the all button is one of the laziest things you can do. And I promise you, I feel like every single horse in this race can win. And the one horse that I want to bet the least is the 14 Agate Road. but let me say, he's right. I do think that Agate Road is better on the turf. But here's why I don't. Is because the name recognition on Derby Day, this horse has worked with fierceness the last 3 times. So everyone's seen that. Everyone knows the horse was on the Derby trail, but was probably a turf horse, but probably needs to be on the turf. This horse is going to be so overbet from the 14 and is not as good as the price is going to suggest. I'm not saying that, like, if you're going to hit the all button, do the all but one and throw out Agate Road. That would be stupid.
I was going to say we could be invoking a very famous rule here.
The horse is going to be completely overbet, so just tread lightly. I am going to pick my top horse. Because like I said, I'm spreading here. My top horse is the 4, Formidable Man.
Correct. I can confirm that is your top horse.
I think Michael McCarthy is, and I don't want to say underrated, because that's not the right. I think people know he's good. I think he's the most underappreciated trainer in the country. I think he's outstanding. I have never seen him get a good horse and not execute with that good horse. When he gets a good horse, he keeps them good. He puts them on planes and takes them where they need to go to win big races. I remember when he had 26 horses in his care, he had like 7 of them in the Breeders' Cup. It's not an exaggeration. Maybe it was 6, maybe it was 7. He's an outstanding trainer. I trust him emphatically when he has a horse that I want to bet on. This is a City of Light who was owned by the folks that he ran City of Light for. And this horse has run extremely well. I usually hate West Coast turf horses coming to the East Coast, but in a wide open race, in Whitey is what they call him. In Whitey we trust. I think this horse is extremely live, which should be a pretty nice price.
Okay, Formidable Man then. Philip, intriguing, because I can see here on the pick selection that, like, Peter's just made a case for Can Group as this big sort of outsider, controversial, not big, but, a relatively left field pick. And you joined him in this. Did you copy his homework?
I just think it's a wide open race, and I just wanted somebody that's a price. I think Pratt is as good as any turf jockey in the country. I think this horse ran as good of a race as you can possibly run in the Breeders' Cup to not hit the board. And they tried him on the dirt, didn't work. Brought him back last time on the grass. I thought the way the race played out, it was very tough. The top 2 were right there close to the pace. I think the horse just moves forward. Second start on the grass. He's going to be a big price. We actually last year was similar connections, but we tipped Web Slinger who was a monster.
You
price.
tipped
Yeah,
Web Slinger,
yeah.
and it was the only reason I didn't have a
Yeah.
disaster of a
Yeah.
Kentucky Derby. And I've never sent you the bottle of whiskey you deserve for that, but you saved my bacon last year at this event in this
Wow.
race because JK and I are more or less useless in it. So there you go.
I just think it's a wide open race. I think JK had a similar thought, right? He's going with somebody that's going to be a price.
Yeah, to your point, Philip, I feel very confident that when you're watching this race and you're thinking about this conversation, that there will be 5 horses within 1 length at the wire. It's going to be whoever gets the best trip, gets the good bob, gets lucky. Like, I don't think a horse wins this race by 2 or wins this race by open lengths. They all look the same. They all look the same. They can improve. They can cut. This is the most tough race in the entire weekend. I don't even think that's in question.
Yeah, the other horse I included, and again, I wouldn't talk anybody off anybody in this race. I thought the 3, I don't know if he's Laganos. I thought this horse was really interesting. He, won his first race at Kentucky Downs pretty impressively. Came back on dirt and actually ran behind Parchment Party, who was very highly regarded. Was competitive in some of the dirt races, but they put him back on the grass, and he ran huge last time. Just another horse, but I think the key here is I just wouldn't want to take Legend of Time at 7-2 or maybe shorter, even though he is arguably the most likely winner.
And the sick part about this race that's going to keep me up at night is he could win by 5.
Yeah.
I just don't think he's going to, and at the price, I have to pretend that can't happen because it's not going to feel.
And I would say overall, just as like a common theme, I don't really love See the Stars in the U.S.
Oh, interesting.
Just like as an overall thought, I think there are some stallions that work better, some that don't.
Of course, yeah.
And I
that
wouldn't-
is interesting because obviously, Charlie handpicks these horses to come over here.
Yeah.
So
And he's as good. And to be fair,
he's
he's
pinpoint
as
accurate.
good. He is
Yeah.
very accurate, and the horse is undefeated on a left-handed turning track, which is pretty uncommon in Europe.
Yeah.
Obviously, it is in Maidan, but
We have to caveat all that form with it is Maidan.
Yeah, it is Maidan. They're running against a bunch of other horses that you have no idea how to get any sort of read.
Yeah.
I don't see, I would be negative on See the Stars. I wouldn't be that positive on Danehill Dancer as an influence for American racing
Yeah.
either. And so
Would you guys leave him in though for your horizontal bets?
you can't get beat by him.
Yeah, that's what I think.
I mean,
He's
Charlie,
he's in all of your selections.
Charlie is
Legend of Time is in.
50% first time in North America. He picks up every
Terrifying.
single trend.
I just
for-
wanted to make sure
his
I wasn't
horses
being a
are-
sucker.
Yeah, no, generally his horses are
But I will
running
say
lights
this
out.
though. I will say this: if you're, I don't know how you all bet. If you're betting 1 pick 5 ticket, you're wrong. If you don't know what I mean by that, then just we don't have time to talk about it now. You need to make multiple tickets to value your opinion. If you are believing what we're saying, and I do believe this is an all-button race, I do think that there's value in coming back and playing the ticket with, Legend of Time and maybe a couple of others that you really like, so that you can have them a little bit more if they win. Because nothing's going to make you feel worse than if you hit the all button and Legend of Time wins at 3-1. It's gonna ruin your day almost.
As long as you don't leave out only one and violate the Rula rule, we'll be happy, Jake.
Yes, shout out Mike Maloney. But I do think that
Okay.
you do want to maybe come back a little bit and press a little bit with Legend of Time because he's probably the best horse. But I just don't think he's superior enough to lean on him.
Basically, it's a bloody messy race. So good luck to you all out there punting it. Just best of luck to you. That's all we can say at this stage. Let's move on to race 10, guys. The Grade 1 Churchill Downs. Peter, I suppose quite simply, if we've just spoken about a very messy race, is this in any way more straightforward? Yeah, your selections, guys, would suggest otherwise. There's literally well over half the field in here put forward.
So I bet Zozos to try to beat Cody's Wish in the Breeders' Cup Dirt Mile. He may have just finished that race 3-1 now. It wasn't a great effort. Having said that, looking at this horse and the way he's been working, coming back for Brad Cox, who's a master of bringing horses back off of layoffs, he looked like he is back in his good form. His best races fit very well. I think this is what he wants to be doing. I think he can get a good attacking position in this spot. I've got to try him here. This is one where I'll be the first one to admit that I may be getting a little bit hoodwinked, but I'm very much interested in my horizontal wagers, pick 3s, pick 4s, pick 5s, using number 6, Zozos. I will mix in a couple of others. Gun Pilot is a horse I'm interested in. This one has flopped at the graded level in the past, but I love the trip this horse is likely to get, I think, if he can just settle off the speed. Wasn't an easy trip last time, and this horse could get a smoother journey today. Mr. Wireless, I think, is a live horse. If they go too fast early, turned back in distance off the break last time and ran a much better race. If he can really repeat that, I think he can absolutely get a win. I don't have a strong opinion in here, but I'm going to mess around with the 6, 10, and 4.
Okay, and the last horse you mentioned there, Mr. Wireless, is top of the list for you, JK, according to this selection sheet anyway. So you're obviously a little bit warmer on him than Peter is.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think if you look at Mr. Wireless, it's 2023. He was 0 for 6. He never won a race. And then he sprinted in 2024 and he won. I think he wants one turn. I think he's a talented horse, and I think that getting back to the one turn is going to help quite a bit. Teano Twist is Teano Twist. He shows up all the time and runs well. And then what else did I do? Hoist the Gold.
Hoist the Gold.
Yeah, this horse is a little tricky. He's had a lot of fast. He's going to get bet a little bit, which is a little bit problematic because I don't trust him necessarily. But he's got some really, really fast races. He hinted at being the best one-turn horse in the country for about a half a second. So, you know, I think this is a tough race as well. But I have a very strong opinion in the last race of the sequence, so I'm fine spreading a little bit here.
Is that a spoiler alert? I want to pause on Hoist the Gold for a second, just because we did one of our most popular shows amongst our hardcore in the money media audience that we do all year. Last night, our pro player roundtable, and we are honored, as has been shouted out before, to have Sean Borman, record-breaking BCBC champion Sean Borman, in the house tonight.
God, he's got a load of shout-outs, this bloke, hasn't he? Bloody hell.
Both Sean and Duke Matisse made the case that this race could be tailor-made for a run from Hoist the Gold. I did not include him in my official selections, but I do just want to underline the idea that he may hold the cards and he will be on some backup tickets at least.
Sean, I'm surprised you came back after last year and the stress you went through with meeting me.
What's that story?
We'll keep that story for another time. We will. Philip, can I have your views, please? Because, once again, disagreement here. It really feels like day one there was a lot of kind of, yeah, that's what wins, on we move. Whereas day two, Derby Day, not a bit of it. You want to throw more names into the mix here. Confuse the audience more, please.
I think, I think the first two races we're going to cover are just very wide open. I think Hoist the Gold's best race, they're all running for second. This is a pretty bad grade one, to be honest. I think I'm just...
You call it bad. When we're being kind, we call it winnable.
Yeah.
Ooh, that's good.
To me,
they have wonderful etiquette over there in your part of the world.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you.
Yeah, you
This
guys did
horse-
try to, we had to leave, but outside of that.
After I saw Hamilton, I almost didn't talk to her for a week.
Right, well, can you let Philip talk, please?
this, to me, this horse is just a one-turn horse. They tried to run him along. It didn't work. He could be the speed of the speed in here. I ended up picking Trackmate just because the debacle in Saudi coming back scares me with Hoist the Gold, or else I would have picked him first. Yep. I think this horse just last two starts has won easily in both starts. It's a huge step up in competition. But to me, this horse is going to sit just off the speed, worked well. I don't know which race Dwayne Lucas is going to win over the next 2 years that you're going to just be like, man, he's got a couple more darts left.
Coach!
But I'm hoping it's Trackmate. I don't love anybody else, and I want somebody new that maybe isn't as exposed as some of the other ones and maybe has more upside.
Yeah, it's like the sort of potential over proven type of angle, which we see time and time again be well punted. Let's move on, guys. Should we move? JK, do you want to chime in there? No, you're done. Let's move on and talk about race 11, the Turf Classic Stakes. And, of course, again in here, a bit of European. Oh, should just point out up on the screen right now, these are your picks for race 10, guys, just in case.
We really are all over the shop in this race, huh?
Yeah, that's what I mean. It's very confusing working with you lot. On to the Turf Classic Stakes we go. And again, just referencing back to the Charlie Appleby factor, he's going to have Naval Power in here. Oh, this horse, a funny old profile. A crack 2-year-old, obviously had issues as a 3-year-old. Now looking to kind of kick on with his 4-year-old campaign, essentially. He's been gelded a few starts back, which is interesting given the level of ability. He's travelled to Keeneland from Dubai when we last saw him. I don't know. He's not a horse that I absolutely love, but I think that maybe that's a little bit harsh on him. He's won plenty of races, but I don't know, there's something about him, given the late gelding operation he had, the fact that he kind of gets shipped around left, right, and centre, and I know he performs pretty well, Peter. Am I being tough on him? Maybe I am being tough on him. It's because of, like, I think we hope for so much after the 2-year-old campaign. The 3-year-old campaign delivered so little. Do you see my angle?
I absolutely do, but I think that you hit on what might be the thing with this horse, which is the old snip snip.
The ultimate equipment change.
The cruelest cut of all, you might say.
Very, very nice reference. I think that Naval Power, I mean, I feel like the last day he really showed a different kind of attitude. I mean, if you're looking at any kind of form figures or speed figures, this was a massive leap forward in his first start where he didn't have other distractions. And, you know, you look at this form line to Master of the Seas, who needs no introduction, a proper Group 1, Grade 1 horse. I'm tempted to forgive any of the past transgressions because of how much more focused and serious he looked after being a gelding. You know, it's hard when horses had 8 starts. I'm a lot more worried about start 8 than starts 1 through 7 for that reason. So I'm more forgiving than you for that reason.
Okay, that's fair enough. Are you in agreement, Philip, with that sort of? Life is different for him now, quite literally.
Yeah, and I just think, I mean, if you look at him, he's only run one bad race in his life where he bled in the Dewhurst. I think when you look at these maiden races, I think the older horse divisions are just, the races are better. Like, I would argue some of the races, the Sing Spiel is probably as good as, you know, the Canadian Turf or some of these other things that these horses are coming out of. It's the 3-year-olds, it's different. So in my mind, I couldn't really split him and I'm Very Busy, the 6. Those two, I feel like, are a cut above everything else in here. The negative for me is I think both of them are going to get bet pretty hard, and I'd probably be playing them both in relatively equal weight. I guess the question for me with Naval Power, he's breaking from the outside. It's a relatively short rest back, and he's had to ship to America. Does all that take its toll at some point? But I like him, and I'm Very Busy pretty equally.
JK, are you focusing in on Naval Power here?
No, I mean, I'm going to use him. I think the reason he ran well last time, like Pete pointed out, was the equipment change with the gelding. But there's a little concern when you draw outside. I feel like the European horses don't like running in the clear because that's not how they're trained. They're not trained that way. That's not how they run in Europe. Like, just being out there in the open with just open air, I feel like sometimes they can kind of freak out a little bit. But he's talented enough that I have to have him. I think this race is a kind of an interesting situation where you're looking at newly turned 4-year-olds. I know we're in May, but Integration's only run basically once. I mean, ran in January as a newly turned 4-year-old, a talented horse. Program Trading, who was running really fast as a 3-year-old, who's now making his first start as a 4-year-old. I'm Very Busy a couple times as a 4-year-old. These horses can be improving. So the thing is I'm Very Busy could take a step forward. Program Trading can obviously take a step forward, and Integration can take a step forward. And if any of those do that, they're going to win for fun. Because they're all very talented. I'm an Integration guy, I think, from here. I thought the trip last time was not ideal. I thought the yielding ground might not have been ideal. And I love the fact that you're going to get a very talented horse who has run well being inside before in some of his previous starts. And you get Tyler Gaffalione, who's in his zone right now. Tuck in there, save ground, and you just have to kind of get lucky. Integration's not a single type horse for me, but a horse that I'm going to lean on.
Are you off him with cut in the ground, though? Because it could rain.
Yeah, but they always say it can rain here.
Because it might rain.
Yeah, I mean, sure. Yeah, listen, historically, at least on the old turf, they've had like 7 turf courses at Churchill, so I'm not sure which one we're talking about. But historically,
I
if
just
it
hope
rains,
they make it on the grass on Saturday.
Stop.
Historically, it gets a little, the rail can get a little dicey, but I don't know what the new turf course is. We'll cross that bridge when we get to it. No, I don't like Far Bridge. 1, 6, 11, 5 are the horses I'm going to use in here. I think one of them wins. I feel like you're getting the 4 best horses. You got to get the 4 best trips. You got to get a trip, and I'm not too concerned about the surface at the moment.
Okay, there are the picks, guys, on screen right now. really confuse people again here, but not a bit of it in the next race, because guys, we get to move on to the Derby itself. Genuinely really excited to have this discussion for the last part of this show, because I just feel like this is, we may have slightly poo-pooed the Oaks a little bit about questioning whether it's a real sort of classic, whereas this Derby, first of all, before we give our picks, Philip, how good a Derby do you think this is? Do you think there's going to be horses that we reflect on from this year and think, by God, that was a really good Derby right the way through, into the placed horses and beyond, or not?
Well, I think just the fact that you have the 2-year-old champ who's going to be the favorite, who was the fastest 2-year-old champ in a long time, and is coming in off a tour de force, has run one of the fastest Derby preps ever. It certainly has the capability to be that. Again, I just kind of revert back to the horses just don't run as much. Generally, you just don't get horses that are as accomplished running in the Derby, and I think you see that with the way the points were this year. In a lot of the prep races, you had basically a carousel of somebody's going to win this one, then somebody else is going to win the next one. I don't think that normally bodes well for strength of the field as a whole. And I think, if you look at a couple of the horses, there's only a handful, that have won a couple of Derby preps. Like Track Phantom won a couple of early ones. Sierra Leone's won a couple of them. And then Fierceness has even only won one Derby prep. So to me, there's star power at the top. I'm not 100% sure how deep it is in behind.
Okay. So
I do think I think there's 4 or 5 stallions in this group, which I think kind of makes it feel
It's an
like
interesting way to look at the world that people don't talk about. That's smart.
I think there's 4 or 5 stallions in here.
So
I think that's pretty typical. I mean, that's a great question. I don't know in your average group, but I mean, I think you're right. You've got some strong 2-year-old form.
Well, today in the hotel, I watched old derbies, and when you see the names, you're like, wow, I forgot he was even in there. They run 6th, and it's like, I forgot that horse was in there, who's one of the best stallions in the world now. You know what I mean? And
It's really interesting. I think of it. It's funny. My default mode as a horse player is to think of, okay, what kind of figures did they run after the Derby? How strong is the Derby? But probably from a breeding industry point of view, the smarter way to think of it is, okay, who are the stallions that came out of this race? It's not something that horse players think about, but as people who love the breeding industry and love horse racing, it's a smart way of looking at the world.
So it's, when I look at the race sort of from coming in cold, as I was talking about earlier with a few of the guys out there, you look at the bare form and the bare figures and the bare facts, just pure facts, not chit chat. You're not kind of swayed by any other outside bias. And, I put down my pen and paper, so to speak, and I just thought, I don't understand why Fierceness doesn't win this, and I don't understand why he's got a bigger price. Now, the last statement I obviously do understand because of his blowouts. I get that. But he's performed more often than he hasn't, and I know that is factored into his price. But he's the best horse in the race with a terrific draw for his tactics, and he's going to play catch me if you can to horses like Sierra Leone and the rest. And they're going to have to be superstars to catch him. Surely, JK.
Are we giving picks now?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. You can go ahead with your pick.
Yeah, just want to make sure. So
We can chatter more if you want, but I think it's time
No,
for the
we want
rubber to meet
picks.
the
We want
road.
picks, right?
I was extremely confident that American Pharoah was going to win. I was extremely confident Justify was going to win. Those are 2 horses that, if I look back in my Derby life, I thought could not lose. And that's me telling you that because I don't think those 2 horses can warm Fierceness up. And let me tell you why.
Now that's some crazy talk.
So Fierceness is juvenile. Okay, when he was a juvenile, he was a 2-year-old in the Breeders' Cup. He ran a 105 Beyer speed figure. If you're not familiar with Beyer speed figures, I'm going to give it to you in 30 seconds or less. Basically, it's the higher the better, like a quarterback rating in football. It's a scientific way to compare races using track variants to understand how other horses are running. It's very scientific, and it's the smartest thing that's ever happened in horse racing is speed figures. It makes the most sense. It's the best and most dependable way to evaluate a horse's performance. Okay. Fierceness ran a 105 in the juvenile. He ran a 110 last time. Okay, that's before the Derby. American Pharoah, when he won the Derby, he ran a 105. In the Preakness, he ran a 102. In the Belmont, 37-year wages, 105. Justify, 103 in the Derby, 97 in the Preakness, 101 in the Derby. All 6 of those performances aren't as good as what Fierceness did as a 2-year-old. And then he came back as a 3-year-old in the Florida Derby and ran 5 points faster than any of those horses ever ran at any point of their Triple Crown campaigns. If he breaks, he cannot lose. If he breaks, gets clear, and he doesn't have trouble, it's like Patrick Mahomes in the Super Bowl. Well, if he hurts his ankle, yeah, sure, he can't win. But if he gets a bad trip or he stumbles out of the gate and ends up 17th early, yeah, sure. If he breaks, he's in the clear. You can just turn around and walk to the window and wait to get in line first and cash your ticket. If he breaks, he wins, 100%.
Okay, pretty straightforward. Strong view to start proceedings. We've got a clap from back there as well. Like it. Okay, well, try and follow that up then, Peter.
I've got it. I've got this. I've got this down. So, and we're not that dissimilar, but I have a very different way of looking at it than Jonathan that ends up in the same conclusion. So you can take that for what you will. We talked earlier about the bingo card, okay, that we used to have on the old DRF/In the Money Players podcast. One of the things was JK tries math, fails. Now, I've got some math for you here, though it actually this time supports JK. I've heard every sharp person tell me if Fierceness runs his race, he wins. Every sharp person I've talked to, okay? So, Fierceness has run 5 races. He has run his race 3 times. He has not run his race 2 times. So what are we guessing the chances are that he runs his race
Well, this is
in
like
the Derby?
primary school math. The chances are he runs his race in the Derby, sir.
So let's just say
You're doing the roulette wheel thing.
Yeah.
Oh, it's red. It's got to be black. It's got to be black.
No. It's the opposite. I'm saying 5 times he ran, 3 times it was good. So let's even be a little more conservative than that. Let's say there's only a 50. So basically, he's run his race 60% of the time, 3 out of 5. So let's say in the Derby he runs his race 50% of the time. We'll even deduct a little bit off the raw math. 50% of the time he runs his math and cannot lose. Why is he not an even money shot? And he's 2-1, 5-2,
because
3-1.
Because when I was in the airport today in LaGuardia, someone said. They said, hey, when are you going to be on KSR? I said, I think on Thursday. And then he said, who do you like in the Derby? Which is my favorite thing people ask me. And I say, I like Fierceness. And they want to argue with me. You asked me.
We have a word for that.
Yeah.
The old ask hole thing. They ask you your opinion, and then they want to argue with you about it. Yes.
But then he said, this is the answer to your question. He said, well, he only shows up sometimes. And that's why he's the price he's going to be is because people think he only shows up sometimes when he caught a sloppy racetrack and a horrible trip in the Champagne and he was short and had a bad trip in the Holy Bowl.
Yeah, it's factored into his price. The bad runs are factored into his price. If he had won all those races and we had no bad run, he'd be a hell of a lot shorter than he is now. So take it as a gift from the good Lord above has given us the gift of fierceness, okay?
That's some good godmother
hey, look,
activity back there.
I'm getting into my godmother
That's
role
much
here.
better.
I tell you what I should do. This is what I should tell. Lucy Priestley is the mother of this child. I was going to say something else then. What we should do is I'm supposed to give a gift, obviously, being the godmother, and I was going to have like an engraved hip flask. I thought it was a nice gift. But I haven't bought it yet. So now I'm thinking after this show, put the money on fierceness.
Yeah, take that money.
And whatever the result is, goes into a little bank account for the child for a later date. He can do what he wants with this, and it'll be the fierceness account. I think this is a much better idea. I'm going to pass it on. Now, the only issue here on this panel is that Philip Shelton at the end is about to put a pin in our fierceness balloon. So take it away, please, sir, because you are not in agreement with the boys.
I would agree with 95% of everything they've said. I think if he runs his race, he's absolutely the most likely winner. The chance of him running his race is better than 50-50 in my mind. But it's a 20-horse race. Things can happen. To pick different horses just to try to spice it up a little bit and talk about a couple of the others.
Yeah, I'm good on you for that. We like that.
It'd be very dull if you didn't, frankly.
Yeah.
I think, to me, Sierra Leone's really good. I think the scenario in my world is what happens if they just absolutely blaze the first half mile. And the last race that Fierceness ran was just weird. Maybe he's just miles better, and the speed figure would tell you that. they basically conceded him the race about 50 yards in.
Agree with that.
Because the way points work, people just said, why do I want to take him on? If I get second, I get in the Derby. And the way the race was ridden was just weird to me. Like, they basically just said, all right, we're not winning, but if we get second, we're in the Derby. And it just created this really weird race, which he ran the fastest Buyer prep, I think, since like maybe Bellamy Road when he won the Wood by about 30.
Good shout.
And then Bellamy Road bombed out in the Derby when he was a can't lose horse. So I just think you have a bunch of speed horses drawn to the inside. Like Dornoch is drawn on the rail. He's basically proven he is at his best when he's on the lead. You've got a bunch of the other horses that are drawn down inside. I just think, what if they go 45 and change and he's sitting 4 wide in third, or he might still and he could still win from there. But I think there is this scenario where, or he breaks a step slow. Like I've just seen horses like this in the past that when they're really good, and when they got to look somebody in the eye, it's a different thing. And you just don't know with him. Like he's never been in a battle. He's either just killed everybody or he hasn't run.
And I just want to say this quickly: is that you're right. That's a question. If someone goes 45 and he's got to look someone in the eye, what's going to happen? I just don't think there's a 45 horse in here, right?
Yeah,
when I say 45 to the half mile, like Dornoch.
Yeah.
Let's be honest, he ain't going 45 to the half. And if he does, I mean, he's not going. He might not even. Honestly, he's probably not going to run. If the DRF has on the front page, he's got a quarter crack. He's probably not going to run. We'll see. But he's not going 45.
Muga for the win? Is that what you're saying?
No,
JK?
but he's not going 45. And then Track Phantom, who's a fast horse, who's adding blinkers. Like, his biggest question mark in the Louisiana Derby is, does he want to go that far?
Yeah.
Steve Asmussen's entirely too smart of a man to say, let's send him out there on a 45 and change. So, yes, you're right. If they go 45, I question how Fierceness will handle it. Who's going to go 45?
No, I think that's fair. I think what happens in these big races is it just always feels like the reality of a 20-horse race, there are going to be 3 horses that are logical to run well, that their race is over within 5 seconds. They get slammed, they get shuffled back, they want to be 5th, instead they're 15th. And that just happens when you have 20 horses. So it always feels like to me, people are more aggressive the first quarter mile because they don't want to lose position. They don't want to get shuffled back. And they have to be more aggressive.
Derby, so let's be honest. People do make strange decisions and aggressive
Adrenaline.
decisions. Adrenaline, big day, big hype. Things happen. Wait, we want Philip's selection as a result of all of this.
I picked Sierra Leone, but again, I think Fierceness is absolutely the most likely winner.
Okay.
I think, I'm not trying to beat him on putting all my money through Sierra Leone and leaving Fierceness out. The other horse I thought that was interesting was Catching Freedom, because again, for me, the scenario in which Fierceness gets beat is there's a pace meltdown, and I think he is just going to be somebody that's coming from way off the pace. So I've just created the scenario in my head where Fierceness gets beat, and that plays to the 2 horses I picked.
Makes
I
sense.
don't think that's the most likely scenario.
But it could happen, and you want to be in a position.
Yeah.
I get that.
I'm going to piggyback on. I'm going to give my kind of other interesting horses to use underneath, or if you hate my Fierceness opinion, you can use. I like Sierra Leone, of course. Catching Freedom. I actually don't think Catching Freedom is going to be that far back.
Yeah.
We on our podcast we had Brad Cox on, and he said that Flavian Pratt said right before the Louisiana Derby, Catching Freedom slammed his head against against the gate and was just kind of slow away from there. Brad thinks Catching Freedom will actually be closer, and if he's closer, I think that helps his chances. I like Catching Freedom. I love Just a Touch as an individual. If Fierceness was not in this race, I would probably pick Just a Touch. I thought he ran a huge race in the bluegrass, attending those fast fractions. And then the last horse I want to mention is Domestic Product. I've been nerding on you a little bit with the speed figure thing. I think that speed figure in the Tampa Bay Derby was wrong. The pace was so slow, they struggled to make a number. And I think Domestic Product ran pretty damn well, and I think he's going to run well. He'll be a big price. I don't think he's necessarily going to win, but I think he's a 2nd, 3rd, 4th type of horse.
When you see Irad at 30+1.
Yeah, in the red and white Clarvich silks for Chad Brown,
we're under a minute.
What? Do you want to add anyone else into the mix? Because I
Just
feel like
very
the
quickly,
one,
I've got to mention Honor Marie as another who might be able to get
this
the
is
job
like
done
the
as a
ultimate
closer.
wise guy horse. Like everyone's tipping this horse up. Go on, take it away. Quick minute.
Vanessa, first of all, amazing job from you hosting this. Thank you, JK. Thank you, Philip. Thank you, Molly. Thank you, Mark. Thank you, the team at TaylorMade. We have so much fun being here doing these events. Honestly, one of the best things we do all year. Really, really appreciate being able to do these final answer shows. We want you to stay tuned and stick around for the rest of the Derby-thon. If you're watching, we're going all the way to tomorrow morning. I'll be on in a couple hours, and that'll be interesting to see what kind of form I'm in 2 hours from now. But really want to thank everybody who turned up to Malone's and our hosts here, Malone's Tate's Creek location. Just an honor and a privilege to do our show here in front of this great audience. Thank you, everybody, so much. May you win all your photos.